Wow, thank you, Janelle. I hear that introduction. I said, dang, who is that? I want to be like her one day. And I should say, just as an added note, I think my kids did turn out just well. The oldest is a dentist, the middle one is a corporate executive, and the youngest one is in the Navy serving our country. So I think they did all right. I think they did all right. So, first of all, welcome back. There's just a lot of positive energy that is in this room as you start this spring semester. I thank you for this very generous invitation to come and be the convocation speaker, especially for MLK. But I have to admit that I'm a bit challenged by the theme, Lives of Reconciliation. But in thinking about that, even with the challenge, when I think of historical figures who have led lives of reconciliation, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is very much near the top of my list. Had he lived, the Reverend Dr. King would have been 87 years old on the 15th of this month. He is not alive today because he was assassinated in 1968. His life of reconciliation exemplified by his words and actions. Dr. King spoke and marched against the injustices of his day. Some of his actions included the Montgomery bus boycott. They included the March Against Fear, the Memphis sanitation strike, and I could go on and on. His Christian convictions compelled him to action in the face of blatant and overt racism, compelled him to seek justice, compelled him to work against oppression. Dr. King was a drum major for justice and a recipient of the Nobel Prize for Peace. But he would say of himself, in the quiet recesses of my heart, I am fundamentally a clergyman, a Baptist preacher. The theme of this convocation, Lives of Reconciliation. And truth be told, it feels a little odd to have this topic and to be talking about this on this inauguration day. Anyone paying attention to the last 18 months would say this last campaign season was particularly nasty and ugly. So much so that both the outgoing President Obama and the incoming President Trump have called for a coming together of this nation, a moving towards unity in our nation. In many ways, 2016 was the unearthing, the unsettling, and the unraveling of the United States. It unearthed the racism that many of us knew was present or wondered maybe we were past, but this past season unearthed the racism that is very present. It unearthed the sexism that is present. It unearthed our true feelings about immigrants in this country. It unearthed the very discontent that many who have felt powerless have felt. It was unsettling because this land of the free, home of the brave, somehow didn't feel like home to very many people, and wondering, where in the world are we? It was an unraveling of the illusion about the state of this nation. We could no longer say we are post-racial. We could no longer say that we are post-sexist. We could no longer say we are post-injustice, that everybody has an equal opportunity, that everybody can achieve what God has put into their heart. But maybe we are post-civility. If ever there is a need for reconciliation, now is such a time. As I stand here before you, there are 892 hate groups in the United States. 892 hate groups in the United States. 43 million people live below the poverty line, and we're not talking about those who are near poverty. We are talking about those who qualify to be under the poverty line. There are hundreds and thousands of immigrants who are fearful of being separated from their family. Our DACA students are wondering, can they really complete their education here in the United States? Black unemployment is still twice that twice that of whites in the United States. In spite of all the efforts and all the marches of Dr. King, we are still twice as likely to be unemployed. The United States has 5% of the world's population, yet 25% of the world's prisoners. 5% of the world's population and 25% of the world's prisoners. And guess who those prisoners are? Every 98 seconds, a person is sexually assaulted in the United States, and every 8 minutes, that victim is a child. And only 6 out of every 1,000 perpetrators ever end up in prison. The top 1% of our wealthy people in the United States earn an average of $1.3 million a year, and yet the bottom 50% earn $16,000 a year. And that number for the bottom 50% has not changed over the last 3 decades. The Southern Poverty Law Center has reported that in the 30 days following the presidential election, the number of reported hate incidences numbered 1,094. Those are the ones that were reported. In the last 2 weeks of December, that number has dramatically decreased. But with the inauguration of our new president within the hour and protests already underway, I feel there will be another significant spike. And on I could go. Clearly, reconciliation is needed. By definition, reconciliation is the act of causing two people or groups to become friends again after an argument or a disagreement. However, there are those who would say that while the U.S. is in need of reconciliation, we are not yet ready to have that conversation. We're not ready to have that conversation because we, the inhabitants of this country, those who discovered this country, and those who were brought here in chains against their will, and those who were forced to leave the lands that they had occupied before anyone else showed up here, we didn't begin our relationship on friendly terms. We weren't good friends, and then we had a falling out. We had a disagreement on how to govern ourselves. Heck, for many years, we weren't even seen as fully human, let alone viewed as friends. Many of us, the marginalized and the oppressed, want to have a conciliation conversation before we start talking about reconciliation. I get that. Particularly as an African American woman, this sentiment resonates with me. It resonates with me because of my own experience with people who want to talk about being reconciled, who want to talk about having a multicultural church, who want to talk about living together and getting along, but they want to skip over the part about addressing the nature of the breach. They want to skip over the part about talking about why we are not together. They want to skip over the part of talking about why our churches are segregated in the first place. I get that we all want to worship together and be one because we are brothers and sisters in Christ, but we forget the part that black people were kicked out of, not allowed to be in white churches in the first place. And now that our music is so special, now you want us back. So they want to talk about reconciliation as an outcome and not as a process. They want to talk about reconciliation as something that we just say has happened and have achieved. And if we're all sitting around the table, we can pat ourselves on the back saying it is done. Want to talk about reconciliation as something achieved as opposed to reconciliation as a life that is lived. So how do we live a life of reconciliation? I believe an answer can be found in Matthew 5:9. Matthew 5:9 says, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. Notice it says, called the children of God. Not that people declare themselves to be children of God, but called the children of God because of their actions. And I would say they are called the children of God because they smell like children of God. So who smells like children of God? Well, they are the ones living lives of reconciliation. They are the ones who seek peace, not just for themselves, but as Dr. King did, seeking peace, justice, and freedom for all the vulnerable, all the marginalized, all the oppressed. And you say, smell like children of God. What does that mean? Remember when you go to the cafeteria, you first got there, and you go into the door, and you say, it smells like food. And somebody next to you says, no, that smells like pizza. You know exactly what to expect because of the smell, because of what you have experienced before when you encounter that sin. So when we actually run up on children of God, we see the lives that they are living, and there is an aroma about them. Because there are some people who call themselves children of God, and you just wonder, what God are they serving? You just wonder, if that's what being a Christian is about, count me out. Maybe y'all don't have those kinds of experiences. I remember being at Purdue as a graduate student and having the evangelist in the yard saying, I'm a Christian. And it's like, okay, yep, I'm a Christian too. I get that. And we should all be following after God. Yep, I get that. We should be lovers of Jesus. Yep. And then he said, and all you girls who are wearing skirts are going to hell. And it's like, hold up. Hold up. One, I'm a grad student. All I got is sweatpants. And with that kind of Christianity, where is the love? Where is the inviting people into a loving relationship with Jesus Christ and with one another? So just because someone says they're a Christian, if they don't sound like a Christian, they don't act like a Christian, if they don't smell like a Christian, we are not in a position to judge. But if you don't have that smell, if it don't smell like pizza, I really question if it really is pizza. Might be some Play-Doh that's up in there. So my brothers and sisters, I think we need a sniff test. Living a life of reconciliation, to smell like children of God, requires intentionality. In requiring intentionality, it means we have to have a want to. We have to want to do it. Want to do it is different from a have to. How many of you ever had to do something? Like your parents said, okay, you have to make up your bed. And like my youngest child, I would tell him 9 o'clock in the morning, you have to make up your bed. It's 5 o'clock at night. What happened to the bed? I'm getting to it. A have to do it is different than a want to do it. And a want to do it is very different than I'll do it if you do it. I'll get involved if they're involved. And it's really different from, well, the reason I'm doing this, see, is because he kind of cute. She kind of fine. And they're into that social justice kind of thing. So since they're going to go to the MLK chapel, I think maybe I'll just go and just kind of sit by them. Not calling anybody out. I don't know y'all like that. So living a life of reconciliation involves taking up a cross daily, becoming a witness and an agent and evidence of God's love, grace, and reconciliation of all things. Living a life of reconciliation is about choosing to seek reconciliation, seeking the reconciliation of broken relationships, the broken peace, broken systems, and broken people. Remember, the emphasis on this chapel is a life of reconciliation, not a moment of reconciliation, not a class of reconciliation, not because I'm trying to connect with that boo for social justice reconciliation. It's a life. It's not a momentary game of trivial pursuit. A life of reconciliation requires one to be relentless, even if you have to go it alone. A life of reconciliations means being relentless, being persistent, and I like this synonym for relentless, being pig-headed. Look, I'm just not going to give up. I know it looks impossible. I know it looks difficult. It means having a can't stop, won't stop attitude. And it means rather than being discouraged by the size of our problem, that we begin telling the problem about the size of our God. You can clap, it's okay. Some of y'all need to tell that tuition statement about the size of your God. Just putting it out there. It's like, I got 5 cents in my pocket right now, and there's at least 3 zeros in that bill that is due. So I need to speak to the bill, and I need to speak and say, no, God is great, and he has provided. I believe that, and I'm going to get a job so I can pay it. Okay. We need to be relentless despite being tired and wounded. People who are relentless, people who smell like the children of God, people who are living lives of reconciliation are always finding themselves in the midst of conflict. They are always being misunderstood. They are constantly having to guard up and gear up. And they always are operating with the knowledge that they might not see true reconciliation in their lifetime. And just when we think things have gotten better, or at least things can't get any worse, here we go with the latest breaking news. A story to remind us that we live in a very, very broken world. And yet, children of God choose to live lives of reconciliation. Being sure of our calling and being sure of the direction that we are going in is actually moving us closer to the reconciliation that we are desperate for. Not just want, not just long for, but are desperate for. Because we know that this thing called reconciliation, this work that is calling us, these actions that we are doing, the haters who are out there, all of us is telling us that this ministry of reconciliation is real, and this ministry of reconciliation is something that has been given us to God. I believe that Dr. King was able to endure the haters. He was able to endure the dogs. He was able to endure incarceration. He was able to endure not just the bomb threats, but the actual fire bombs at his house. He was actually able to endure not just the water cannons that were thrown at him, but they took those water balloons and they filled them with bodily fluids and then threw them. I don't know if I would be able to take that. Some of us, if you were at home and it was a march, and if back home in Grand Rapids, we had a march on our campus because we were actually in session on that day, and it was drizzling a little bit. And as I was marching to the chapel to start for the march, I could hear some people say, well, I would go, but it's kind of raining out there. It wasn't a hard rain. It was just a little bit of drizzle. We are some comfort-loving Christians. I believe Dr. King was able to do all of that, and perhaps I would have been able to endure all of that because he kept the end in mind. He kept before him what the promise was. He kept before him a vision of not just his children holding hands with somebody else's children. That was okay. But he kept in mind what was before him, true shalom, the true kingdom of God. Living the life of a reconciler is costly, not just because of the riskiness of standing with the oppressed and the marginalized, but because it also requires the riskiness of unearthing our own issues. It's so much easier to look at what somebody else has got going wrong in their lives and to point to somebody else about their issues. But remember, when you're pointing a finger at someone, you got 3 more pointing back at yourself. Let me give you an example of an personal unearthing that I had to do. So, my daughter loves her mama a whole lot. And I knew she loved me a whole lot when I went to go visit her in Nashville, and she had planned out a chocolate tour. If anybody knows anything about me, I regularly have life for chocolate parties that hardcore chocoholics say, this is too much chocolate. Seriously. So she took me to this small craft chocolate factory, and I was like, okay, I mean, it's just small. Whenever I go to a new place or I'm with somebody new, with some strange people, I'm always looking at where are the exits, right? It's just a person and myself growing up in the time that I have. I'm always looking for where are the exits and who are the people that it looks like if something goes down, they're going to be my protector, right? That they're not going to be the people who say, oops, I'm going to use you as a shield, right? Who is the person that's likely to say, I'm going to be your shield, right? It's like, I'll look for that. And so, and Nashville is the South. I mean, for real, it is the South. So I already had a little bit of qualms about this. So, but I'm here in this small little chocolate factory in the South looking for where the safe people, and I saw this guy, and on the front of his T-shirt, it said, love your neighbor as yourself. And I was like, all right, and it had a little cross. I said, that's a Christian. That person's going to step in front of a bullet for me. We good, right? We good, looking for my exits. But then the person turned around, and on the back of his shirt, it said, your Christian neighbor. It's like, okay. Your Muslim neighbor. It's like, okay, I actually have Muslim friends. I could do that. Your male neighbor. Live with a man. Okay, that's cool. Your female neighbor. Yeah, I'm a female. I love other women too, so that's cool. Your racist neighbor. I was like, hold up, wait a minute. And I hope he didn't think I was stalking him, because I followed him a little while just to make sure that that's what it actually said. See, I can do the, oh yeah, I do this. Because like, but God, the racist neighbor, do you know what racist people do to people like me? They make my life miserable. These are the people who were telling me that I need to go back to a country I was not born in. I'm a California girl. That's where I was born. They're not saying you need to go back to San Diego. No, that's not usually what they're saying. Or denying my humanity, or denying the fact that I too am created in the image of God. So God, really, loving your neighbor as yourself is cool until you run into that neighbor. Who is that neighbor? Who is the person that if God said, I want you to go, you don't even have to, I just want you to go sit on the bus by them, that you would say, but they don't smell like a Christian, God, I know. But they talk about people like me, God, I know. But that water balloon looks kind of suspect, God, I know. Who is that neighbor? Martin Luther King Jr. had to love every neighbor, even those with the water balloons, even those with the police dogs, even those with the fire bombs ready to throw them at his house. Loving your neighbor doesn't mean tolerance. It doesn't mean that you do you and I'll do me and we just don't have to interact with each other. No, loving your neighbor means seeking justice, and as noted theologian Miroslav Wolf states, and not simply so that justice happens, but so that reconciliation can also happen. Living a life as a reconciler requires personal transformation before we can even get to the business of social transformation. It means we as individuals have to begin seeing things differently. It means that we have to begin saying things differently. And it means that we have to begin doing things differently. It requires a continuing conversation. And I know that there might be some people in this room who will say, we have talked enough. I am tired of talking. And I would say, while there has been a lot of talk, I would say that we've done a lot of talking to ourselves, that we've done a lot of talking about each other, that we've done a lot of talk over each other, and that we've done a lot of talk past each other, but we really haven't done much talking with each other. And especially, we haven't had a conversation with that neighbor. And even more so, if we're thinking that that neighbor would make us uncomfortable, or if having a conversation with that neighbor would require that we hold back on our wrath and giving them a piece of our mind, which they so richly deserve, hold back on demanding our own rights, and requires us to actually forgive in the true biblical sense of the word forgive. Dr. King comes to mind. So no, we haven't talked enough. We have barely talked at all, especially to the people who don't look like us, and we really haven't had much conversations with the people who disagree with us. How many of you have unfriended somebody on Facebook because you didn't like their postings about the election? No. Not talking and not listening to each other leads to misperceptions, and misperceptions become reality, and people suffer, systems remain broken, reconciliation becomes just a game of trivial pursuit. It's only something that is pursued when I am comfortable, when I don't have to change, when I don't have to go the extra mile. A life of reconciliation is hard work. It is costly work. It requires intentionality. And I believe there are 4 necessary things to do this. First, we need to face our own truth. We need to face our own truth about who we really are, what really, really bothers us. And we need to look around and see the truth that is around us, not just with select news outlets, but really look at the truth that is around us. Second, we need to be willing to respond with an uncomfortable yes. Too often as Christians, we like to sing the song saying, yes, Lord, I will go, until God asks us to do something that is uncomfortable. You want me to move where? Oh, okay. See, what I really meant was, God, this is what I really meant. I really meant I will go anywhere where it doesn't snow. Okay, God, what I really meant, God, is I'm willing to participate in any march where I'm not in danger of being arrested. No, okay, really, God, what I meant that after I get paid, because I only got $10 in my pocket now, but after I get paid, then I will give $10 to this cause. We need to be willing to respond with an uncomfortable yes. Yes, Lord, I will go because you have asked me to go. Yes, Lord, I will give because you have asked me to give. Yes, Lord, I will serve because you have asked me to serve. And in my case, at my institution, yes, Lord, I will stay because you have asked me to stay. I signed up to work at Calvin College for all of 3 weeks. That was it. I couldn't see myself there. I didn't feel welcome there. I only felt tolerated there, not truly welcome. It's like, we'll put up with you here. So I only went for 3 weeks. I only went for a paycheck, honestly, and to get out of housework. That was the other part. But when God said, but I have a mission for you. Okay, Lord, show me. Where am I going? Where am I going? Your mission is here. Wait, no. See, Lord, the mission is supposed to be in Chicago. The mission is supposed to be in D.C. The mission is supposed to be in Atlanta. Why here? Because I have need of you here. So 32 years later, I am still there because I was willing to give God an uncomfortable yes. So second is respond with an uncomfortable yes. The third is pick and pursue your cause. Your cause for justice, your cause for reconciliation might not be my cause, but there is something that God has placed on your heart if you are a child of God, that something that burdens his heart, that he is placing on your heart to burden you, to move you to action. Pick that and go with it. If you do your part and I do my part, we will experience the kingdom of God a lot quicker. Don't let somebody guilt you into participating in something that's not your lane. Stay in your lane, boo. Stay in your lane. The reason I did not get up here and start off with a wonderful song is because I cannot sing. You would know the anointing had dropped if I started singing, because I don't do that. I stay in my lane. I can preach. That's what I do. Some of us feel like because so-and-so is involved in this, someone has guilted us in saying, okay, I'm going to stand up for race relations right. Yeah, we should all be concerned with that, but if your passion is sex trafficking, get to it. If your passion is relieving poverty, get to it. If your passion is something else, move with it. Pick and pursue it relentlessly. Pursue it as if your life depended on it. Pursue it as if someone else's life depends on it, because likely it does. And then fourth, hang in there. Don't treat this thing like a game of Trivial Pursuit. Don't treat it like it's really not that big a deal. Oh, this race thing, why y'all sweating all that? We saw that with the civil rights movement. That's what Dr. King did already. Did y'all hear the stats that I read earlier? Clearly, there is still work that needs to be done. Hang in there, even when it gets uncomfortable. Hang in there when someone in their pain calls you a racist or a sexist or says you don't understand. And if someone does say that to you, get past your pride and your hurt feelings and listen, because likely there is some truth in what they are saying. Hang in there even when you don't see yourself in the curriculum. Hang in there when you're tired of professors not mentioning or even acknowledging the for real discomfort that you are experiencing because of the state of this nation. And especially today, hang in there, even though you're being tired of being told, peace, peace, when there is no peace. To live a life of reconciliation, we, like Dr. King, who had said in his words that he had been to the mountaintop, and like Jesus, who had the cross clearly in his view, we need to live with the end in mind. That end is the outcome of reconciliation. But to get to that outcome, we must go through the process of reconciliation. Living a life of reconciliation means seeking justice, and it includes respecting the humanity and the image of God in all people we encounter. The person we sit to next to class, the person who we supervise, and yes, even that neighbor. Living a life of reconciliation means counting the costs and racing towards justice anyway. My brothers and sisters, as you begin your spring semester, I want to challenge you to make a commitment to live a life of reconciliation. God bless you and have a great semester.